did that once, man, and it just echoed through the whole room.
It's good to have you back, by the way.
It's just good to be back.
Feel it.
I didn't really go anywhere though.
I know, but still, I'm glad you're back.
I am too. Thank you.
Good.
I'll go ahead and go then. That's perfect. Good evening. The regular meeting of the Southern Shores Town Council for October the 5th, 2021 is now in session. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. During our moment of silence this evening, I would ask that you keep Carol Cowell and the other members of the Cowell family in your thoughts and prayers. Ed Cowell, a longtime resident of our town, died on September the 21st at the age of 88. His knowledge of the history, his knowledge and history of the Eastern North Carolina and the people and events that have shaped that history will be sorely missed. I remember Ed as a very, very close friend who cared deeply for our town and those who live here. If you join me now.
Mr. Mayor, once again, I'd like to suggest that we add Beth Secules to that list. She just passed yesterday.
I didn't know that.
She's, anyway, without saying anything more, please add her in our thoughts and prayers also.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. This time, council, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Leo. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Jim. All in favor of approving the agenda, indicate by saying aye.
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 We have an agenda. At this time, I'd ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Leo. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the consent agenda, indicate by saying aye.
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 This time, I think I'd call on the town manager. Introduction of department interns.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're fortunate to have 3 interns with us this fall. Hunter Braithwaite is going to be working in the town hall. He's unable to be here, but the police chief and the fire chief both have an intern here that they'd like to introduce to you. So I'll ask fire chief to come up.
Thank you, Cliff.
And these guys get taller.
Good evening, Mayor,
Good
Council.
evening, Ed.
This is Nick Gardell. He's been with us for approximately a year with the fire department. Nick lives in Southern Shores on Dogwood Trail. He's a senior at First Flight High School and is planning on attending the Coast Guard Academy next year, where hopefully he'll be playing lacrosse. Right now, he's in training. He turns 18, I think, in January, right? So he'll be a full-fledged red tag firefighter, so he'll be able to ride the truck and do all the aspects of firefighting. He's really just in it to learn as much as he can, moving on from the public safety sector into the Coast Guard. So everybody, Nick Gardell.
Yay.
Hey, welcome, Nick.
Me too.
Good afternoon, David. Or good morning. Yeah, good
Hey,
evening.
good afternoon, good evening.
Afternoon, Mayor, members of council.
It's my honor to introduce to you the intern for the police department. His name is Joseph Craig. He resides on Duckwoods Drive and attends First Flight High School. Lives in Southern Shores, as I said. He's also interested in forensics, plays varsity soccer, golf, lacrosse, and he's also on the newspaper team at the high school. And we're glad to have him. We're trying to keep him busy. I think Officer Corporal Brookhouse gave you a little bit of insight on what real police officers have to take care of today. So I introduce you to Joseph.
Yay.
Thank you, David. This time I'd like to call on Teresa Osborne. Good afternoon, Teresa.
afternoon.
Almost evening.
Nice to see y'all. So I am here tonight to present the results of your June 30th, 2021 audit. The town has received what's referred to as an unmodified opinion on its financial statements, which is the best opinion that you can receive. And this is outlined on pages 1 and 2 of your audit report. This confirms that your financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And additionally, there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses noted. And this is outlined in the internal control report on pages 56 and 57 of the financial statements. The audit report is 57 pages long, so I'm not going to go through it page by page, but there are a couple of highlights that I would like to walk through with you this evening. The report begins with what's called a management discussion and analysis, and that is on pages 3 to 10 of your report. You may find this to be a more user-friendly summary of the town's finances, and it includes some discussion and analysis that you might not get from looking at just the financial statements further into the report. Exhibits 1 and 2 on pages 11 to 13 are what we call the governmental-wide full accrual financial statements. Statements do not include fixed assets or debt. The typical governmental financial statements have been converted to prepare these two statements to include all debt and fixed assets. And I'm going to circle back around to these two statements in just a few minutes. I'm going to start tonight on pages 14 and 15 of your report, if you would like to turn to those pages. The first column on both of these pages represents the general fund, which for reporting purposes includes your capital reserve fund. Financial accounting principles require those two to be combined. And then the column that's referred to as a non-major fund, that is your cemetery fund. I'm going to focus tonight on the general fund. On page 14, you will see that revenues exceeded expenses by $1,115,810. You'll see that on the first column, page 15, kind of the third number up from the bottom. That's revenues over expenses for last year. Overall revenues came in significantly higher than budgeted, primarily due to sales, occupancy, and land transfer taxes. As you'll remember, this budget was developed in May of 2020 during the early stages of the COVID pandemic. There was uncertainty in these revenues, and at that time, I'm sure you had no idea that we would experience one of the greatest tourist seasons with occupancy tax revenues of 50% more than the prior year. In addition, we experienced record property sales, bringing in land transfer tax more than double the prior year. So those three revenues, occupancy, sales tax, and land transfer tax, came in about $1 million over budgeted. And that is pretty typical throughout Dare County last year. Last year was a property revaluation year, and the total property values in Southern Shores increased 18%. Actual current year tax revenues came in $135,000 over budget, primarily because the estimated property value appeals came in less than expected and budgeted. I want to talk a little bit about fund balance, so I'm going to be looking at the bottom of page 14. On the bottom of page 14, you will see that unassigned fund balance at June 30th, 2021 is $5,189,116. That's the bottom number of that first column there, kind of near the bottom. That is a decrease of $806,430 over the prior year. The primary reason for this decrease is that your current year budget for fiscal year 22 includes plans to use $1,270,519 of your available fund balance. So at June 30th, we look at what your total fund balance is, and then we subtract out that portion that you all plan to use to balance your next year's budget. And you'll see that number above the unassigned number. It says assigned for subsequent year expenditures, and that's what that number is. We also have to back out a portion of fund balance. We have to look at your total fund balance, and then the state gives us a calculation for what they call stabilization by state statute. That's another portion of your fund balance that has to be restricted at June 30th. And that number is made up of two different things. It's made up of, if you look up towards the top, you'll see the due from governmental units of $834,811. That's revenues that you earned last year, but you did not receive those until July and August of this year. And that's primarily going to be things like your May and June sales tax, occupancy tax, and then a very large distribution for your April to June land transfer tax. And so although we recognize those as revenues last year, we can't include that in unassigned fund balance because you did not physically have that cash at June 30th. In addition to the due from governmental units, we also add to that any encumbrances that you had at June 30th. And encumbrances represents contracts that you had committed for at June 30th that had not been completed. And those encumbrances at the end of the year were $247,520. So that's how we come up with that $1,082,331. This unassigned fund balance, which that's the $5,189,116, that represents 82% of total general fund expenditures for fiscal year 21. The town adopted a new fund balance policy last year that increased your working fund balance from $1,750,000 to $3 million. So if you subtract the $3 million from the $5,189,116, you're left with $2,189,116. So far as financial reporting purposes go, we can't back that $3 million out on this statement, but there is a note in the financial statements that discusses that. I kind of started out by talking about Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2, which I told you were the full accrual statements that include fixed assets and debt. You'll see a reconciliation at the bottom of page 14. That shows how you convert this governmental statement to Exhibit 1, which includes fixed assets and debt. It shows the reconciliation for the balance sheet. And then on page 16, you'll see the reconciliation to the full accrual basis for the income statement. So that's how those statements are related to each other. The town does not have any traditional debt like loans, but these statements include the town's actuarially determined liability for post-employment benefits of things like pension and retiree health insurance. You can see these liabilities detailed on page 39 of the notes to the financial statements. Your pension liability, your OPEB liability at June 30th was $1,640,367. And then your liability for the law enforcement officer special separation allowance pension, that was $713,000 at the end of June. Again, you're not going to see those in your governmental statements, but you're going to see those on Exhibits 1 and 2, which are the government-wide financial statements that include the fixed assets and the debt. Although the liabilities for these items are required to be reported in your statements, there is no funding requirement, meaning that you are not currently required to set any funds aside for these. However, the LGC is recommending that local governments begin having conversations and consider funding these liabilities by setting funds aside in irrevocable trust funds to offset the liabilities. Overall, in spite of the uncertainty of COVID, the town ended the year in very strong financial condition, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Just on page 38, had long-term obligations. As of June 30, the town had a legal debt margin of 131,051. Can you explain that? If
It's kind of
possible.
an absurd calculation, but the calculation that they use is that you can borrow up to 8% of your property valuation, which is an insanely high amount, but that's the calculation. So it's 8% of your property values. I don't know if anybody, well, I do most of my work in Dare County. I don't know of a lot of places that have that kind of debt, but that's what you would be allowed to borrow.
That's interesting. Okay.
Any other questions for Teresa?
Are upfront expenses for beach nourishment that are be credited back when the project undertakes, is that represented in here as an income, or is it?
It's not. You won't see that. They're actually expensed in these statements. And then if any of those are reimbursable, once you all get your debt proceeds, the entry will take place then. Yes.
I just had one other one I had here. I know I think Ben provided an audit letter or a letter on material pending on threatened litigation claims and assessments against the town. That doesn't show up anywhere in here, does it? I was looking for it and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I'd have to look for it.
That's all right.
But because there wasn't any, there's nothing to disclose.
Okay.
There was nothing material that met the requirement.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Once the revenues are realized that are due from government units in this fiscal year, because we ran about $1 million under budget, that should increase the unassigned fund balance.
It does. It's a timing issue. So on August 15th, that goes away. But if you did a full accrual, if you tried to close your books again on August 31st and recognize revenues that were due at August 31st that you didn't receive till September and October, you would still be left with some kind of a restriction.
Okay.
But you're right. It does kind of take care of itself once you've collected those revenues, but it's kind of an ongoing calculation.
Thank you.
Have we submitted this to the local government commission?
It has been submitted to the LGC last week. We haven't heard back from them.
Okay.
So we'll wait until we get a final approval from them before we provide you with a copy to post on your website.
Thank you.
Any historic evidence of how long that usually takes the LGC to sign off
It
on it?
usually takes, anywhere from a week to 2 weeks. So we should hear anytime now. And typically we don't have any comments from them. If we do, they're, very minor kind of things. I don't anticipate anything.
Council, any other questions?
Thank you.
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thanks, Teresa.
Good to see you again.
You as well.
You're up, I think. Just give me a second. Michael Fletcher,
Yes, hi.
the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Mike Fletcher. I'm the chairman of the exploratory committee for getting a library and library branch in northern Dare County. I'd like to update the council and present some one of the briefing that like to give to the county library board. I'd like to break it into 3 parts, which is 2 requests for the council, which will become clear what those requests are as I proceed. Also a review, because I think due to COVID and all the things that have transpired, it's been quite a while since we've talked, and I'd like to refresh both the council's and the town's memory as to what the library board, our library committee has been up to in the last year or so. I also have some concluding comments. Sheila, could you put up this first slide? I'll be getting that briefly in a few minutes. Yeah, that's the one. So our bottom line essentially is we need the council's help. We are both politically and as far as a request to the county, we are at the standstill. We requested to give a presentation to the county library board, and we sent this via letter in August. And to date, we have received no response at all. Since the library board makes recommendations to the county regarding library activities, we cannot go forward without action by the library board. Therefore, we would like you to intercede on our behalf to at least allow us to get, our time in court, as it were, to present our proposal for a library bench in Northern Dare County. Also, the library board is, which had, I think, been down a couple of members, is currently being reconstituted. It is my hope that the new board, which we don't have the details yet as to who is going to be on it, will be more responsive to our requests. Also, to go on to the review portion, the details of our actions are more outlined in the packet that we gave you. We gave a very detailed outline of what we have done over the last year or so. So again, to go into kind of a review of what we did, we started out and we did surveys and so forth and talked to folks in the town and overall, I think we had very good public support both in Southern Shores and other adjacent communities, Kitty Hawk and Duck, which would be affected by this branch. Political support, however, I'd describe as fiscally cautious because, of course, people don't want to spend money, which is perfectly understandable. But at the time, before COVID, we did, I thought, have a certain amount of momentum going forward with county politicians and also people in Duck and Kitty Hawk. Although we did not have total political support, I thought we had good public support and at least verbal support from most of the city officials in the affected communities. So that is where we're having. Again, one of the main things that we ran into while we were dealing with the issues of trying, to explain what this was, what this proposal was, is that we dealt with misconceptions about what libraries are for and what they can be used for. And, often the comment would be, but they just lend books. And that is a misconception because libraries are a big help to quality of life in any community. Lifelong learning, meeting places for civic and history groups, as well, children's activities and so forth. They are, in fact, a cultural hub in many communities where those kinds of activities can take place, in addition to, of course, underserved people who don't have access to books or computers and so forth. So again, on the board here is a draft presentation that we put together for the library board that we were going to present if we ever have an opportunity to do so. One of the things that had come out in our efforts is that if we look at essentially the quality of life services in Dare County, the Northern District, which is us and Kitty Hawk and Duck, are somewhat underserved in relationship to some of the other areas, in addition to, of course, that we have substantial portions of population, which is growing, and also a substantial portion of tax revenues coming from our area. Could you go to the next slide, please? So there's certain geographic challenges in Dare County. One is it's very far north to south and very narrow east to west at points. So getting library services or any other quality of life services to all parts of the county is a challenge. And we know that, you know, from the top of Duck to the Killdibble Hill Library is 17 miles. And trying to get there on a congested summer day, as anybody would guess, is extremely difficult. Other kinds of things are happening also in regards to the county is changing. We've grown substantially, including a lot more permanent residents, both here and in the other adjacent communities. And that's a considerable increase. So in preparation for having essentially, again, more permanent residents, quality of life services, including libraries, I think are important to maintain, you know, the attractiveness of our communities to our residents. Let's go to the next slide, please. So again, when it all started, when COVID started at least, you know, everybody painted a rather dire picture of the fiscal situation of Dare County. And as we know, and as we just heard from a previous presentation, almost exactly the opposite of what was feared has happened. The financials of the county are actually very good. Also, we did all the legwork in regards to getting a proposed site, and Town Bank very generously offered the area right behind there, the number 6 Juniper Trail, which is right behind Town Bank, to lease that for $1 a year for I think up to 10 years. So that is, you know, an extremely generous offer, and the total funds that are required to start it up, you know, get the initial books and to run it annually, all of those are at about $150,000 each, which is not a huge fund, a huge amount of money compared to what, you know, the county apportions for other activities. So again, that's kind of where we are right now. We really need the council to you know, intercede on our behalf if we're going to go forward, to get the county library board to, you know, give us our day in court, as it were, so that we can present our presentation. And I think our argument is quite strong. The bank offering us, you know, the extremely generous offer for the location, that's not going to last forever. And, you know, the current financial picture of the county is also excellent. And again, as I mentioned, the demographics and changes in the county and growth of permanent residents also speak to an enhanced need for quality of life services such as library branches. So I think, you know, in conclusion, I'd like to say, I think it's really, you know, the argument for having a library branch in northern Dare County, I think is quite a strong one. And again, you know, based on all the surveys we did, I think we have strong public support. The only thing that's been lacking is political support. You know, people give us, you know, their approval, but again, we need folks to intercede and interact, both the public and the council, to you know, talk to the county level to get this moving forward. Okay. So again, this is where we're at, and I would like your support in getting this moved forward. If not, there's not a whole lot we can do on the public side of things to get this started if the county doesn't want to move forward. Do you have any questions?
Council?
What conversations with District 3 Board of Commissioner have you had?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
The
hear
Dare
you.
County Commissioner for District 3, what conversations have you had with him? the Dare County Commissioner that represents this region, this district, have you spoken to him and pled the same case?
Yes, I can't
say Steve House. exactly.
Are you aware?
That's Steve House.
Well, you may all recall that we came to
Steve House.
Well, we had made a presentation in July to the commissioners, and they have made no response whatsoever. That was back in July. That is our dilemma, which Mike is pointing out.
Yes,
So they will not make a response.
yes, this is Louis Morrison, one of the members of our committee, in case
Mhm.
people don't know.
Good evening.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to tell you what I know, just from conversations with members of the county board, individual members, without naming any names, but there's not a strong feeling of support for a library in the northern part of Dare County. And there just isn't. And I don't know why. I've tried to get the rationale of what's your opposition to it. And I think it's partly money, but it's also just the fact they don't think we need it. And I don't know how you overcome that. If you've tried to communicate with them, I've tried to communicate with them individually, not as a group. But I don't know whether it would help us to have our council agree to go meet with some of the board members and say, would you like to reconsider this, or would you expel us what your objections are? We haven't done that at this point. I think Cliff had a conversation today with the county manager. How do you feel about that, Cliff? What you learned today?
Well, a lot of what you just said, it is come, I think the county, from what I understand, they've considered it, they've talked about it, they've, their feeling is that they've got the libraries where they need them, and that they feel like if they had to put one here, they'd have to put one there. And so I think sometimes no response might be a response, and that may be the case in this. But I just got the impression that there wasn't the will to move forward at this time.
And that's basically what I've been led to believe as well. I've talked to at least three members of that county board, and they haven't been harsh about it or unwilling to listen to me. They just don't have any desire to move forward with a library location at this time. And I don't know where we go from here.
Mike, I'd like to also mention that after reading through this package and everything, and then also Kevin Wright's email about the reaction from Duck, I talked to the mayor earlier today, and that precipitated the call from Cliff over to the county. My standard line is you guys deserve an answer from the county. Yay or nay, but just to ignore you, I think is wrong. So anyway, we've been trying to work behind the scenes on this.
All right. Thank you. Could I like to close with a personal comment? This is the second committee I've been the chairman of for Southern Shores. And the other one, we wrote reports, we made recommendations. Some of the recommendations, like the walkway, came into being and everybody's enjoying them. Some of our recommendations were not accepted. That's the way it goes. Right? That's politics, and that's, I did it in the intelligence community throughout my whole career. We write reports, we make recommendations. Sometimes they're followed, sometimes they're not. That's the way it goes. I do, however, expect transparency and access in political action by, government at all levels. And I'm under no illusion that our little committee in a small town of Southern Shores is anything more than what it is. But we're still an official committee of this town, and we should have access to our equivalent at the county level. Them not even agreeing to see us or talk to us, I think is completely unacceptable. That's just not a way to do business, and lack of transparency, I find personally very troubling. That's all I have to say, unless you have further questions.
I would just reiterate what Councilman Neal said, which is you as a citizen of Southern Shores have every right to contact Steve House. He lives right here in Southern Shores.
Lives on North Dogwood.
He lives on North Dogwood, and set up a time to meet with him and talk with him. I mean, that's his job, is to represent all of us who live here.
Yeah, I understand. We have some contingencies. I don't want to talk about them at this time of how to move forward on this project, because I'm still determined to have a library. I still think it's a very good idea for Northern Dare County and Southern Shores to do so for quality of life, because that's my main purpose for being on these committees that I've been on, is to help quality of life in Southern Shores.
Could I please add a couple of comments?
You certainly may.
Thank you. To return to Elizabeth Morey's statement about talking to Steve House, Mike Fletcher has told you very little about the odyssey we've been through.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there were repeated attempts to contact Steve House, but he's never there.
Okay.
All right. Another commissioner, who is actually the representative for the library, I happened to meet on a walk in Southern Shores. And he asked me about the response from the library board and foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, we sent a letter requesting a meeting in early August, and we've had no response from either the librarian or the board. So this commissioner said, this county commissioner, I will talk to the librarian and make sure you get a response. Well, that was 4 weeks ago from that conversation. No response. The chairman of the library board, the then chairman, happened to be a resident of Southern Shores. Mike Fletcher tried repeatedly to contact him, and he made no response whatsoever. Mike happened to meet him on the road one day, and he said, well, I'm really leaving the town. Okay, now let me go back to our July presentation to the commissioners. At that time, we said, look, we know you may be strapped for money, although we're hearing reports of these transfer tax money and so forth. We have sources where some of the money may be obtained through grants. So let us work together. At no time did the county commissioners, the county librarian, or the county library board tell us that they would cooperate, that yes, they would welcome grant money to finance this endeavor. In order to obtain a grant, which some of us have experience in writing grants, you need to have a 501c3. I'm sure you're all very familiar with that. Mm-hmm. What we did not know in the last 18 months, took us 18 months to discover that the Library Foundation is a 501c3. And back in July, we had the opportunity to get a substantial grant from a foundation. But because we had no entity through which we could apply. Had the Library Foundation and the librarian told us that they would cooperate with us, we could have got a grant for the computers and the books. So Mike has made a very noble and tactful presentation. I'm telling you like it is, and I could tell you, we've had no response in spite of repeated efforts to communicate. And yes, all we needed actually was the annual operating money of a modest $150,000 a year. And that was confirmed a year ago by the county librarian. And so, council, I think our committee, as Mike has said, deserves to have some support from all of you. All of you appointed us to be an official committee of this town. Do you see the benefit for the quality of life of the residents of this town in having, as Mike has said, a library is a public forum. It's no longer just a book exchange. It is much more, and it would enrich the quality of life of many people in Southern Shores and give them access. And that was expressed by many people in the survey and the conversations we've had. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Ms. Lillies, before you sit down, I'd like to mention that you've hit a few nails on the head, in my opinion. And one of the things that is most striking to me is the non-response that you're getting from the county officials. And that's what I will continue to try and address behind the scenes here, because you are, as both Mike and you have mentioned, an official committee of this town, so that to get no response, just be blown off completely by the county is something that kind of galls me. So I'll work on that. I'll continue to. As I mentioned earlier, these phone calls like what Cliff had with the county today came after I read this darn package and saw that you guys are not even getting a response. Now, I can see the handwriting on the wall where the county is not going to get on board with this, but at a minimum, I think you guys deserve a response from your efforts to contact them.
Yes, and you see, all of you tonight, this evening, can say, committee, you're not making any progress since the wonderful progress we made in the early days. No progress, no response, so you could disband us, and maybe that is the decision you should make tonight.
I'm not ready to make a motion to disband them tonight. I'd like to get a response from the county to their request first. Because I think, like I said, I'm being redundant here. They are an official committee of the town. When they reach out to the county, they deserve a response.
In this private conversation with a leading commissioner, I said, when he told us, well, we don't think we're going to pursue this. So I said to him, well, perhaps we should end this endeavor. And he said, oh no, it's very important that the community, that you consider this community committee. I find that quite paradoxical.
Who said that to you? I'm sorry, who said that to you?
Well, it was, shall we say, this was a private conversation I had with this leading commissioner.
I understand. Thank you.
I'll mention that to you in a bit.
I think it was off the record. But I do want you to know that I found it rather odd.
Thanks for that explainer, particularly about my question about Commissioner Steve House, because I was not obvious from listening to Mike whether y'all had directly contacted him or not. So I feel like I understand the deal now. Thank you.
Did you say that the county board, the library board was being reconstituted? New members?
Yes, they supposedly voted for new members, but we haven't gotten any details as to, we heard, we don't have it on the record as to who was nominated, but it supposedly happened at the last county commissioner meeting. We were just actually attempting to research that
There's nothing
today.
online.
You're touching on a whole different subject here that kind of galls me also, and that is the lack of transparency in that library board. I may be mistaken here, but I picked up they're kind of like a secretive little group. You can't get contact information for them or anything. So there's.
That's correct. We requested, as we were developing our contacts, we requested contact information for the library board, and we weren't given it. They said it was private information. which I find, since it's a public board, I find that hard to believe that the contact information wouldn't be available. That's just my opinion.
Is it, Matt, maybe you know, is it, I've not seen it listed on the county's list of boards.
I haven't either. I didn't know.
That's what I was looking
Yeah.
for, because they would have met yesterday, and I know they appointed some, not to the library, but other groups. And I've not seen anybody's, why that's not posted, because every other board is. I'm just asking.
I believe they were down to like 2 active members, at least that's what I was told. And they were supposed to, add to the, existing members of the board. I think there was like three additional members that they were trying to, that we heard. But again, we just happen to know to get the information
Because
about what's going on.
Yeah.
And, in regards to the library board.
Because normally what I've observed is, if you're interested in a board position, you apply, and it can be a number of them, then the county commissioners approve or deny. Most of the time it's an approval. But I haven't seen that, and I watched part of yesterday's meeting, and I didn't see any discussion around the library.
I mean, I am for full transparency. 2 of our committee members did apply to membership on the board. We believe one has been moved forward, and the other one was not. I'm not going to mention names right now because we don't have any definitive information on what's been approved.
I want to thank you, Michael, and you, Lilis, for speaking to us tonight and telling us what's happening behind the scenes. I didn't know all this was going on. I appreciate your sharing that with us. Any further questions for them, Council?
No, I don't.
Want us to go on, or should we send in our resignation?
Let's wait till the next council meeting
Ah.
before we make that decision.
I think, that'd be the easy way.
But I'm not hearing that any of you are strongly supporting having a library branch in Southern Shores.
I, for one, am all for that, but what galls me more than anything is the way y'all have been treated by the county, like I said earlier. So, anyway.
Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, well, we don't need to dissolve it yet, or, that's the easy way out. You got to keep sometimes hitting the wall and find the soft spot to get through it. So, I applaud you for your efforts, but you're going to have to continue them.
Well, do you think it's worth to continue on?
Yes, I personally think so, because even if the county does not support us, there are other options. I don't want to go into details now, but there's other ways to go forward. A brief bit of history is when Hatteras wanted to get a library, it started running privately out of somebody's garage. So they had volunteers put it together, and eventually, they ran it like a regular library. Eventually, it was incorporated into the county system. So I'm not sure we want to repeat that experience, being that I personally don't have a garage that I can do that from. But, that has happened in the county. That, private, due to the fact that the county did not want to finance it, people took it upon themselves to create the library. And eventually, the good news is that it was eventually incorporated into the county, into the larger system. And it is now, official branch.
Thank you. This time we'll move down to staff reports. I'll call on our Deputy Town Manager, Planning Director, Wes Haskett. Good evening, Wes.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I have a report for y'all tonight for the month of September. I'll start with the permits that were issued. There were a total number of 45 permits issued. Those consisted of 9 zoning permits, 20 building permits, 3 lot disturbance and stormwater management permits, and 13 trade permits. The total amount of fees collected by the department in September was $19,432.70. With respect to the town planning board, they'll be meeting here at the Pitt Center on October 18th, 5:30 PM. The purpose of the meeting is for the board to continue consideration of ZTA 2108, the ZTA submitted by the town to amend Town Code Section 3657, definition of specific terms and words, and 36-165 signage. Also, to continue discussion of potential amendments to Section 36-202D6, maximum allowable lot coverage, and discuss potential requirements for produce stands in the commercial zoning district. That has been on the agenda the past couple of meetings, but time has not allowed, they haven't had time to get to that yet. So you all asked for produce stands to be allowed in the commercial zoning district. So
That was math.
they're getting to it. They just haven't started that discussion yet. Signage has been discussed, the main topic of discussion at the past couple of meetings. So any questions?
Can you speak a little bit more about the lot coverage issue you just mentioned?
Yes, I came to you all, I believe, about that. I reported on it for a previous meeting. I think it was in August. I think it was the August planning board meeting when they met. And it originates in the town code update. There was a question as to whether or not the town should be regulating lot coverage on oceanfront properties with the first line of stable natural vegetation.
Thank you for reminding me. I appreciate
Yes,
that.
yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Anything else? Anything, questions for Wes?
Nope.
Thank you, Wes.
Thank you.
This time I'll call on David Cole, our police chief. Good evening, David. Again.
Evening, Mayor, members of council. September 2021 monthly report. As you can see, we had 1,670 calls for service. That's 27 more than we had for September of 2020. You can see the breakdowns in the pie chart. Up at the top, the incidents, which were the actual crimes that were reported for September. There was a total of 15, which resulted in 25 different total charges. We also had 10 criminal arrests for a total of the 16 charges. Officers conducted 69 traffic stops. Out of that 69 traffic stops, they issued 22 written citations and another 39 warning citations. We also issued 35 ordinance violations. 25 of those were failure to display, 9 for parking in the right-of-way. And we had 6 reportable motor vehicle accidents for September. Questions, concerns?
Do you know where the motor vehicle accidents were?
In the town of Southern Shores, but
Okay.
not off the top of my head. A lot of them were on Duck Road.
That's where I was leading.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't know for sure without checking.
The mix of the warnings and the citations, do you identify who's resident and non-resident?
No,
Okay.
I could, but it'd be a lot of work for Jennifer.
Okay, just asking.
Yeah.
Chief, how long will the beach patrol continue?
We're pretty much done. She finished up last week.
Okay,
So we still have the ATVs, and if there is an issue or a problem, and when we have the manpower, we'll try to get out there, depending on the type of call.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Nope, I don't have any.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, everybody. So for the month of September, the fire department responded to 58 calls. Only one structure fire that month, which is kind of odd, but for summertime. But 1 overpressurized propane cylinder, 34 EMS calls, 1 vehicle accident without injuries, 1 with injuries, 2 surf rescues, 1 EMS standby, 1 gas leak, 4 calls for service would be wheelchairs or address signs, 1 odor or smoke removal, 1 public service, 1 unauthorized burning, 1 canceled en route, 1 hazmat investigation with no hazmat found, 6 fire alarms, and 1 citizen complaint, which was a hydrant buried, that's all. 58 total for the month, which is well behind last year, which was 80. So kind of a funny summer. I don't know.
I missed the last thing you said about more or less than the previous month.
It's well behind last year. 58 this year, 80 last year. So I don't know. Hope that's not going to lead to a busy fall, but it's definitely a different summer this year for some reason. I don't know.
Well, things
Take
are
as it
certainly
comes.
dry now.
Yeah,
I assume
definitely.
you guys are on a higher level of alert just because we haven't had rain in such a long time.
Yeah, just a side note, not related to that, but we are continuing to test hydrants. So if you get any complaints,
Okay,
we're probably a third of the way through them. So,
gotcha.
all right. Any questions?
Just one, did I understand a Facebook posting correctly? You're seeking pictures of dogs for your marquee?
This was a kind of a partnership. Me and Cliff have a meeting probably this week about it. And really my end of it, I guess I can explain it to you, was it's a kind of a partnership that my daughter came up with. I'll give her credit for the dog sign, which really I thought would be really dumb, but it took off. My thing to that when we first did it was if people are looking for their dog, they're going to be they have to see what I want them to see first to get to the dog. So when she brought this to me about the program with the Humane Society, I was kind of against it again. But then when I talked to Humane Society, they have a person from Beach 104 there that's going to get us some free outreach, the different ways just to try and capture some more volunteers. I'm just trying to do everything we can to keep the volunteer system alive. So it's just another avenue we're exploring. So yes, it's on there. My daughter basically runs it and gives Noelle a picture to put up every month. We collect the money and then just donate it to another 501c3. So it's a no cost item for us, obviously, but.
I think it's a great use of your marquee because it draws people's attention to read whatever else you've got on the marquee.
That was the point in the beginning. They have to see whatever I want them to see first to see their dog. So that was the point in doing it, but it's worked out pretty well. So she's pretty good at it.
I'll send you some pictures.
Thank you. Anybody else?
No. Thank you.
Our town manager, Cliff. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to touch on the savings from the Beach Nourishment project. As we've reported, the bids came in way under what we had anticipated they would. The savings from the project amounted to $3,777,498. Y'all remember that the town's portion of payment for this project has always been the equivalent of 7.82 cents on our levy. And that's kind of the mark that we were aiming to hit. The county paid upfront, they paid 38.11% of the project. They paid that amount for the estimated project, they paid that amount for the actual, and that's the amount of the savings. The difference for us is the county was contributing because they were holding us at that 7.82, they were contributing a large amount of debt service to the project because to make up the difference. When the bids came in under, the savings just about ate up all of that debt service that they were going to have to pay. So the debt service dropped from 2.4 million to 75,000. And in doing that, the banks require that we have a certain amount of coverage. So if we're able to pay back, make the payment, we have to have the payment in excess of the payment. And so that's where the county's debt service came in on this project. We needed about $52,000 in 1 year to cover the debt service and about $25,000 in the other year. It's a lot easier to explain this on a piece of paper, but in the end, the savings to the town is $100,019. And again, the two things to remember, all the savings it was going to go back to the county initially, but because the project came in so low, the amount of debt service the county was going to pay virtually went away and ended up saving us about $100,000. I wanted to share that because, when people see that savings, I mean, I'm sure some would think that we're overcharging for this. But the amount that the MSDs are generating and the town-wide are generating, the savings is only $100,000 over the life of the 5 years. Two other things, just wanted to let you know, the BRIC grant, the Building Resiliency and Infrastructure and Communities grant was submitted last week. We should hear by October 15th. The letter of interest was submitted last week, and we should hear by October 15th if we're approved to move on to the next stage of funding. We submitted the grant for the more traffic analysis for the tourism impact grant. And that's been submitted. That was submitted last week. I don't know when we'll hear from that, probably within a month or so, I think. Sheila, the last thing I wanted to mention was about 5 years ago, the town was notified from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers about a formerly used defense site. Every 5 years, the Corps will send letters to everyone in that red project area. The actual property boundary is the black square, but the red area is the project boundary. They're going to mail 1,250 letters sometime around October the 15th. But what this is, it's, and folks may remember getting this letter 5 years ago. The letter is to advise you that information will be mailed to landowners whose property may be subject to environmental or safety concerns linked to past Department of Defense activities. To give you an idea of how concerned they are about this, they're not going to come and inspect this site until the earliest 2041. So on a scale of 1 to 6, 6 being the least concern, this ranks a 5. But because they have to cover themselves, they'll send this letter once every 5 years to let folks know. And there's information. There's a what to do when you find it, and if you find any munitions, number to call, and so folks should be getting that letter in the next week. That's it.
Thank you, Cliff.
Are you going to go ahead and put that in the electronic newsletter?
We put it in the last one, and we'll continue to put
Okay.
it. We'll put it. I believe we got one going out Friday, and we'll do the same. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Cliff, I'd like to mention that a former mayor of ours, Hal Denny, actually flew missions as a Navy pilot and dropped a lot of ordnance
Yeah.
on the future southern shores.
Heard that story.
Yeah.
We can thank Hal for this.
We got him back eventually, though. Yeah, because he had to serve as mayor.
Ben, do you have anything you want to add tonight?
I don't have anything tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. This time, open general public comment. Nothing back there?
No.
All right, we can move ahead. Item 8 on our under old business, our SCPI, SEPI plan, pavement conditions and study, and a CIP plan, additional options. Who's going to address that? Cliff, is that your job
sir.
again? All right.
Sure. In the packet, you'll find you have the final report that SEPI presented. In that, they submitted 2 capital improvement plans for maintenance of the pavement of our 37.1 miles of streets. One option is at $675,000. The other option's at near $1 million. What you all talked about at your last meeting was maybe considering a third option of $800,000. If we were to budget $800,000 a year for pavement maintenance, that could leave approximately $200,000 for construction if needed. If on-site conditions dictated that we needed more ABC stone than what we thought we would, then we've got that $200,000 to account for that. If there's any additional shoulder work, we've got that to account for, or it can accumulate in a capital reserve fund as time goes on. So I reached back out to SEPI, and they can do that analysis. They could do it. If you all decide tonight, I'm told they can have that back by October 15th. It is an additional cost of $4,000 to do that. Right now in our budget, we have budgeted what we'd planned all along was we were either going to proceed with the next street on the capital improvement infrastructure plan, which is Hillcrest. That's budgeted at $1,123,689. If you choose to fund this third option, that amount can come from the budget. So without I don't think we'd have to do a budget amendment, and we wouldn't have to take money out of fund balance to do this. That's one thing. And then beyond that, I'd like to request at some point, maybe October mid-month workshop, that we schedule time to determine how we're going to move forward. You know, the decision we're going to make moving forward in this fiscal year, so we can get some construction projects done. So answer any questions you might have.
I got one question for you, and I don't mean to catch you flat-footed here. You don't even have to answer it at this point, but with this SEPI report, do you see any need for that capital improvements committee meeting?
Oh, wow. Well, here's the thing. If a plan is only as good as, you know, how it's being implemented at the time. A 10-year CIP could go off the rails in a year from now, and it may need to be adjusted. It may need to be updated. But the concern I have is, you know, with a plan like this, it's a design plan. It's ready to be implemented. It's something we can follow. It's pretty prescriptive. If you start monkeying with that too much, it kind of takes away the credibility of that study. So that would leave. So then, what would their charge be? I think there may be some work that they could do with considering the $200,000 of construction. But, you know, quite frankly, I think this plan could take the place of the committee. But I know that it's important that we have public input, and we have people that have a voice and people that deserve to be heard. So I'd caution having a committee that would rank these streets, continue to do that, because again, it's just going to throw the study off. But meeting quarterly or even twice a year to make sure we're on the right track, there may be some value in that. But if you were to adopt one of these two plans, the charge for that committee would have to change pretty drastically.
And that's kind of where I was leading. With this SEPI report, we may need to redefine the mission of that capital improvements committee. I personally think that they still have a lot to offer, because which streets are addressed. I mean, SEPI has given us a big list, but which ones are more important locally, that could be where the capital improvements committee comes into play. But I guess at a minimum, we may need to rethink what their mission statement is, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
I'll be off that committee.
Maybe.
Well, we may have to redefine the whole thing.
I would like to make a motion to authorize town manager to enter a contract with SEPI Engineering in the amount of $4,000, or not to exceed $4,000, provide the additional analysis.
And I'll second that motion.
A motion to second, council. Any further discussion?
I'd just like to say, I think, you know, we've really, as a council, given a lot of thought and discussion to how the difficult choices you have to make when it comes to roads. The bottom line is we have so many roads that need attention. You know, we're already behind, you know, so I really think it's important for this council to refocus and accept that we need to do things a little differently from the way we've done it in the past. And I really think that having the SEPI as a framework to work from, we can still make some modifications if we need to, but I think this is where we need to at least give it a try. And I fully support it.
Oh, I couldn't agree more and I couldn't support it more. I just think that our capital improvements committee
Yeah, you're right.
we need to get them up to speed on this
Yeah.
report and everything also,
You're right.
and put it all in context.
Agreed.
Any further discussion?
No, I have no problem.
I have one question with if they do a renewed analysis, the first year on both the original plans was 675. Will they increase that based upon our appropriated expenditures this year?
I'll ask them to do that. That's a good point. I've never fully understood why it was such a low amount equal in the first 2 years. But I think that's just how it got on track. But I'll inquire
Because
further.
it was equalized, we might be able to capture more of the immediate remediation in
Right.
the first year, and get right to work.
That's right.
It probably was because of more patching it rather than complete rebuild.
Well, I think when we spoke, I think they thought our appropriation was 675 for this first year, so they weren't trying to oversell it, but
Yeah,
it's,
that may be.
And that's what we've been running, around
Yeah.
675 a year,
but
which was an increase from a few years ago.
I'd like to mention one other thing, and this is just for the benefit of the recent newcomers to town. This whole street improvements thing started off with a couple guys, well-meaning guys, who did a very good job of going around town and identifying which streets needed to be worked on, basically. Bill Story is one who comes to mind. He used to drive around. That eventually evolved into this capital improvements committee that prioritized things. Cliff has taken us much further ahead with getting a professional engineering company to analyze our streets and everything. And I think there's a lot of avenues there where both our current capital improvements committee, along with this professional study, can work together and we can continue on. So this has been an evolving process over the last 10 or 15 years, and I think it's at a real good place right now. Not to say it's not going to be improved again later in the future, but we're at a good point in this evolutionary process here.
Council, we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded, and we've discussed it. All in favor of the motion that was made by Matt, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion's made and passed. Anything
And
else?
I'm told we can get this back October 15th. If you were to have a workshop on the 19th, that didn't give you a whole lot of time to look this over.
It's okay.
So,
We'll do our homework
okay.
When do you want the workshop?
The
2
next,
weeks from today, right?
October 19th.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, we're at new business.
Under new business, item 9, town adopts approving resolution and bond order and interlocal agreement for beach nourishment.
This feels more like old business than new business.
That's yours.
So there's two parts to this agenda item. The first being the resolution of the town council of the town of Southern Shores, North Carolina, providing for the issuance of a special obligation bond, the town portion series 2021A. So originally we were actually planning to go to the LGC today to get approval for this. The LGC has decided that they weren't comfortable with issuing this or approving this borrowing until every town had their permits in hand. Ordinarily, that would be a condition, but they just weren't comfortable in doing that. So the concern was, we've got a bid from Weeks Marine, are they going to honor it? Because if you go to the November LGC meeting, everyone's audit is due October 31st. And not everyone can get their audit in by October 31st. So the November meeting was kind of out. So this would move us to December, and Weeks Marine is going to honor their bid until December the 15th. So that gives us enough time under the same budget figure. The other variable is the interest rate. The interest rate that's in this packet, the loan is based on a 1.78% interest. That, we don't know for certain whether or not the bank will honor that. It could go up. Our funding model that the Carters did was based on a 3% interest. So there's some room there. So this document is asking you to approve up to 3%. And if doing that, then we'll still have enough budget to take care of this. Obviously it's a 5-year note. It's repaid in 5 years. Hopefully we get this done at the December meeting. But this resolution is required, as you're saying that under the terms of this resolution, you will honor the bond. So that's one part of this. And the other part is the interlocal agreement that is signed between Dare County and the 4 towns for this project. And what this interlocal agreement does, it kind of describes the arrangement of not only the construction contract, the county will enter into the construction contract. Each one of the towns will be billed separately. There'll actually be a construction fund that's created, and our money will go into that fund. And we will pay our payments to the county, and then they'll take the money out of that fund and pay Weeks Marine. It describes the amount of borrowing for each town here. Not every town is borrowing, but the amount of the projects, and it describes, again, the fund balance that I mentioned earlier. In 2023, that we're getting $52,017 in fund balance, in debt service. In 2024, $25,365. The rest of this is a pretty straightforward interlocal agreement. It's got the ability to modify the project, the payment of the invoices. It's got the setup of the construction fund, and then all the typical liabilities, agreements to work together, mediation, and so forth. But what this does is, in doing it this way, obviously it's going to save all of us a lot of money by having this arrangement, and that's why we're doing this. We bid as one project instead of 4. So I think it would take, if you're inclined, 2 motions for these 2 items.
We can do that.
Yep.
We can do that. Council, I'd make a motion that we approve the resolution of the town council of the town of Southern Shores, providing for the issuance of a special obligation bond series 2021A. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, I'll ask for approval to vote to approve the resolution of the town council.
Aye.
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 Aye. Got it. Thanks for that. I almost finished. The next one is a motion to approve the interlocal agreement as presented. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Thank you, Jim. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All in favor of approving the interlocal agreement as presented indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is made and carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Look, I have a very oddball question.
No, go ahead.
If this bond goes into effect, is it going to be sold on the secondary market? Is it something that an individual could purchase, an asset of the bond?
I don't think so, but I need to
just
verify
curious.
that.
I didn't know
I'll
if
check.
it's going to have one buyer or one holder, or if it's going to be resold.
Council,
I don't want to get censored.
the next item of business, item 10, under new business, is consideration of Town Code Amendment 21-07, combustible materials. Page 182 in your list of agenda isn't for tonight. I have a motion on that consideration of TCA 2107.
I'll make a motion to approve TCA 21-07 regarding combustible materials.
Well, isn't that singled out just for
I'm sorry?
the Kitty Hawk Elementary?
Mhm.
Under the, not everybody understands that part of it. Yeah, and under the supervision of the fire department.
Are you going to present it?
You want to address that for us, Ed?
Yeah.
Or maybe
Yeah.
Wes
Wes is
Wes
there.
can do
We
it.
needed to be a little more
Wes has got
transparent.
it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Chief Limbacher was contacted by a representative from the school system about their upcoming fall carnival in November. And they had requested to have a fire, and the term bonfire was used, I believe. And currently in our fire damage prevention ordinance, Chapter 14 specifically prohibits bonfires right now. So in an effort to allow the school to put on this fire as part of the carnival, we, town staff, are proposing to amend that section so that bonfires held by Kitty Hawk Elementary School under the supervision of the Southern Shores Volunteer Fire Department or other fire protection official or officials would be allowed. And thinking of other fire protection officials, maybe the Kitty Hawk Fire Department, or maybe the Fire Marshal, Dare County Fire Marshal, would be appropriate as well. So that's why this is on your agenda tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And if I may point out also, I misspoke earlier in my report. The planning board meeting on the 18th is at 5, not 5:30. My apologies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Wes. You have any problem with it? Recess?
No, we're good. No, let's go.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I made a motion. Do I need to make that again?
No, I think we have a motion on the floor that you made.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Just for
A
beneficial.
second. Any further discussion?
No, I don't want to prolong it. We can go to the vote, but I feel my wife was a member of the PTA committee that was part of requesting this. I just wanted to make that known. I don't know if that precludes me from voting or not, Ben.
I think you can probably still vote.
Okay.
No.
I just wanted everybody to be aware. And I hope the chief's behind this happily.
And we hope we don't see it on your incident report for November. Got it.
Hold on, guys.
We're-
Make
I
sure
think
get
we're
it
good
exactly
now.
right.
We just need to,
Make sure I get it
we just
exactly
need to
right.
vote now.
So we have a motion. and a
We have a
second.
motion and a
A
second.
motion and a second. I'm gonna call for the motion just in a second.
Okay.
You gotta find it. What page is that on?
182,
182.
182.
I'm almost there.
Okay.
Too many pages.
It's a lot of book.
There's a lot of votes.
She had to prepare it. Took 5 trees.
All in favor of the ordinance amendment as presented, indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? No. Motion's made and carried. Thank you. At this time, we got probably a lengthy discussion coming up here in a few
Oh,
minutes
okay. Okay.
with discussion of the police department salaries. I'd ask for a 10-minute recess. We'll reconvene here at about 5 minutes after 7.
Got it.